Welcome to the Leadership Logic Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sonia, and this is your go-to platform for candid conversations about the ups, downs, and breakthroughs of leadership. You better believe it. We get into it and we tell the truth. So whether you're just starting a journey or looking to refine your leadership skills, this is your space to join us for lessons, blessings, laughter, and of course, the logic behind great leadership. So let's dive into it, good people. Hey, good people. Welcome back to the Leadership Logic Podcast. And I am your Dr.
I am Dawn J. Ward.
Jay Sanders.
And we are your host of the Leadership Logic Podcast, where we have candid conversations about the ups and downs in leadership. And of course, we share valuable nuggets for all of those leaders and those aspiring to lead. You know, we get into it and we tell the truth. So we have also those moments of laughs, but it's all about us helping leaders learn to be self-reflective and grow. So tonight, we're talking about a very difficult topic sometimes, and we're going to talk about toxic leadership. And all of us at some point have gone through our journey. The three of us, we've been in education for many, many years. And so I just would like to know, have you ever experienced a toxic leader?
We don't have those.
Say, yes.
Well, give us some more information. You know, we have to tell the good people the truth, and we got to get into it. So, you know, we may be helping save someone out there who's experiencing this. And they're going through it right now, or they don't want to be that toxic leader.
I survived. So yes, I did. I had a toxic leader. I was at a school and was actually moved to a school. It was one of those times where they were taking all the APs and they were moving us around, and ended up at a school where the environment was just not great. You know, I am a big stickler. We talked last week about, I always say, don't tell me. I don't want to know. But everybody kept coming saying the same thing. You need to watch out. You need to be careful. The leadership was so toxic. I was AP, had a toxic leader. The leadership was so toxic that we had offices next door, and I would email. Like, instead of getting out of my seat to go next door, I would email. And the toxic leader would say, well, why are you emailing and I'm here? I was like, because every time there's a conversation, there's a whole different outcome. And so it became a really bad environment, to the point where sometimes the secretary would shut down for weeks. Teachers would be in tears. I mean, parents were, it was just a very toxic environment, and it just made it hard for everybody. So
are you saying that you emailed because whenever you had a verbal exchange, it just didn't go well?
Not that there was an argument or anything, but whenever there was a verbal exchange, at the end of the day, it was, I told you this and I told you that and I said this, but, you know, never said. So if we put it in writing and we have a date and a timestamp, there's no discrepancy about what was said and when it was said. So
documentation.
Oh, there was no verbal conversations anymore, because it couldn't be trusted.
Got it.
Yeah,
what about you, Jay?
I've been through that. I've experienced it as a teacher, and then, you know, as, you know, an administrator. But the thing about it, I tell you something, this is something that I've learned just kind of like, just as you've been in this game for a while. You can tell a lot about, you know, toxic leadership when you go even on interviews. I say that because I'm just going to give you an example. I remember when I was looking to get closer into the Houston area from where I was at, when I was at, as we call it, the show, Great Place. So, you know, I go on this interview. Now, you know, I'm at the show, I'm at home. So, I mean, this family, we know about each other.
Yeah.
Everybody, you know, for everybody. So, you know, that's why you see if you ever go on my Twitter, you see that east side. But anyway, I go to this interview, and I done checked the website out, looked at everything. Well, I go up in the interview, and this district close to my house, probably maybe like 10, 15 minutes. But I look over there, and I see a staff of about 12. Now, remind you, it's about, well, I won't even say 12, probably 10. But remind you, it's about 7 administrators. So I go to this interview, only the principal and the associate are in the interview. that's a red flag to me.
Why do you say that?
Because here's the thing. Now, if it's just like we're doing a screener, okay. Well, after that interview, they said this completes the interview. I said, "Oh, okay. So, this is like a screener, right? You have about 7, 8 APs. With your associate makes 9. Will they be on the next round? And they tell me no. Why would I want them on the next round? I was like,
Mhm.
okay. I said, well, just to see how we communicate, right? Well, no, I make that decision. On that comes through me. And I was like, okay, that's sometimes God will give you discernment. So I was like, okay, Lord, I know I've been hard headed before, but I felt my spirit that Color Purple song, but at the end, God is trying to tell you something when
I
they
want to be
in the
close to
church.
home. I want to be close to home. Not that bad, right?
No, not that bad. So I said, okay. Well, anyway, I got off the job. I said, well, I've decided I'm gonna renege. And they, then they were Paul like, wow, why are you reneging? Why you want to go back to I was like, well, yeah. She was like, well, that's a tough school. I said, but let me tell you, we family over there. I said, and what I felt in that interview, I said, I'm sorry, and that's fine. You don't have to. I won't ever apply in that district again. That's fine. But I said, it's family over there. And I said, I'd rather be an hour away from home fighting traffic and having real rough late nights with people that got my back versus me going into a situation where it's unknown and the aura just felt to me that it was not comfortable. And it just even the moves though, because they were like, well, what makes you want to get close? I said, well, I'm looking to move my dad down. My dad has
Mhm.
dementia very bad. Nobody said, well, oh, that's tough. Nobody said anything. You got to look for these keys, because I'm telling you, and I'm just on the interview piece, y'all. We ain't even got the story, so I'm telling you, look for these things. I even when I was looking, just back in the area, especially after I buried my dad in November. I've been on some interviews about, some other positions. I've heard, my condolences,
Absolutely.
for your loss, things of that nature. Ones I don't hear, I just see that,
It's just that acknowledgement that, hey,
yeah, but
sorry
when
that
you
could happen. Yeah.
and I'm not saying everybody has to acknowledge that. Some people are so oblivious to things, and this is where you're gonna hear about being toxic, and you're oblivious to it. Because some people are toxic and don't even know it. They're oblivious to it. And it's
That's
not,
so true.
yeah, it's not that it's just they doing it on purpose.
That's
They
just who
don't
I
know.
am.
Because some people are just so introverted and not non-personable that they can't be personable about things. They don't even know they're toxic. So, and I've seen that. So I mean, those are flags, just like I'm saying in interviews and stuff like that. And
But
that
I
right there
also
showed me
think,
something.
too, you touched on a point that's so important in leadership. It is having compassion. I cannot work for a leader who is just not self reflective, because often I am highly introverted. If you really know me in real life, everybody knows that I am highly introverted, but I walk an extroverted mission every day in the work that I do. And so I know
Now I
how to
know why
be
you connect with
adaptable.
Jace. Now I know why you and Jace connect. That makes sense now, because he an
Yes.
introvert. So now I get it, because I'm not that person.
Yeah, I'm highly introverted. And so while my personal style is, I've always been a loner and my circle is very small, even from teenage years, college, adulthood. I've never been a person who closely do intermingle with a lot of people, but in work a lot of times, and even in my social life, people don't know that I'm highly introverted because I have the ability to connect, to have great conversations with people. I don't come off as unapproachable. And because I have that Southern hospitality, I will speak and talk and engage with anyone. So it's very hard for people to realize that I'm actually introverted. And I think that is very important in leadership because you have to be adaptable. Although your personal preference is one way, you have to look at what is for the greater good of everyone that you serve. And as a leader, your job is to be of service to grow other people and especially students, because that's a trickle down. Yes, we know we're supporting and serving students, but the way to get to the students is through the adults and how you lead the adults in your actions. And so A lot of leaders don't realize that. We talked about it on the last episode that you can trace back an unhappy staff somewhere to the leaders.
Yes. Yes.
And so, what do you do to help that leader become more self-reflective when there is an extreme disconnect between the staff and that leader or that leadership team? Because it's not always just the leader, it could be a team of people.
Well, first
I
off,
would
that
definitely.
head. Let me tell you something. Though that head, they gotta not have that Kanye West mentality. You can't tell me nothing.
Yes.
If you got that, if I'm coming to you and the first thing pop up in my head is nah, wait till I get my money right. Whoa, I mean I can't tell you nothing. And so, cause don't y'all laughing because you know I'm telling the truth. You got people in leadership like that. You can't tell them nothing. You know, this is my thing, and I'm gonna tell y'all something, and I'm just going to them. Hitler, Genghis Khan. Hold on, man. Hold on, Genghis Khan. Saddam Hussein. It's a couple of more in there. One of the Roman emperors. I'm gonna tell you what all of them had in common. They wouldn't listen to nobody. All of them died. All of them died. So, you know, that's the thing. You got to be able to listen because if you can't listen to people, you will fall. And so, my thing of it is, I had to like that as a teacher. Like, you know, you couldn't tell that principal nothing. I'm like, they like, something, man, she listen to you. No, she won't. No, she won't. I said, if she not listening to her counterpart that's an administrator, what makes you think she gonna listen to me? I'm just a teacher. So no, and you can't tell them nothing. So I mean, them the people you have to just say a prayer for at night and keep it moving because eventually it's gonna come back on them. Because this thing with a capital K called karma. You can't treat people bad and expect it not to come back because it's gonna come back. It may come back in your personal life and it may come back in your professional life. It may come back both, but it's gonna come around. So you gotta just say that prayer and keep it moving.
That's true. What about you, Don?
I was going to say that's a really good segue because you said really what I was going to say because I was an assistant principal. And so as the AP, you know, you always have to be that collective front in front of people. And so sometimes I had a principal and she would always say, we're good cop, bad cop, good cop, bad cop. And I was like, yeah, I always have to be the bad cop, unfortunately. But as we said in the last episode, sometimes the people still can relate to you, even though you're the bad cop. You can bring that information in a way where they know that they're still respected. So to go back to that original thing, I think if a leader does not want to listen, it's really, really difficult for everybody to come together, But Jay, I always found that there's that one teacher. There's that one teacher that you can send in there and those things can happen. Everybody just have to tell that one person what they want, and sometimes things will get done. But when you have a person who, and that's it's not arrogance. It is, in my opinion, when you won't listen to anybody, that's a confidence issue. That means you're really not confident in who you are enough to listen to what the people around you have to say and then come together and make it happen for the greater good of everybody.
Yeah, I think that happens when their need for power becomes greater than their purpose-driven mission. Like they need, and I don't know what that is, that constant need to, because there's a difference between ruling and reigning. And some people think that leadership is synonymous with ruling, and that is, and it may work. There are times where you got to go in and clean up some inherited bad systems and you have to improve that. There's a time for that. But if over time you are consistently exercising your authority more so than your art of influence as a leader, you're not gonna create a sustainable climate that will be positive. You'll have ritualistic compliance, but you will not have success. You
won't throw. And that's one of the things I would always say, that a title on the door does not make me, and it doesn't make anybody respect me. Because if there's a kid or a parent who's going to cuss you out, they're going to do it regardless of what the title is. But if you have built that relationship and that rapport, nobody cares about that title. So I always said a title doesn't get you the respect. It's that relationship that you have with those people that get you that respect.
Yeah,
And the words
my
of
motto
Chad
is
Butler,
always
her.
your title does not entitle you to respect. That is, in fact, this is a shameless plug, but I wrote all about it in my book. Don't confuse authority with leadership. Available on Amazon and Ingram Sparks. Look it up.
I like
Don't
that
confuse
promo.
authority with leadership because I talk about that. I talk about those leaders who can't understand why it's important to be resilient, but also be vulnerable, how to humanize yourself to people, how to be self accountable and say, take, like you said, Jay, listen and take the feedback. Sometimes you can have an action plan, but it falls short during the implementation process because you don't stop to progress monitor it with the people who actually have to do the implementation. And that's critical as a leader. And I'm sorry, Jay, what were you going to say?
No, I said that part right there. That I mean, both of y'all that hit it dead on the head. That was like a Chad Butler moment that made me just when she said that made me say, "Shit." That was that. I mean, cause that I mean, both of y'all you're spot on. And the reason why I say that because it's your delivery. Your delivery is everything. Like, and I people used to like it was hard for me to adjust because I would hear people say, "Hey, Mr. Sanders," I would tell them, "Call me Mr. Sanders." Now, when I get my doctorate, you can call me Doctor J. But I said until the end, just call me. Hey, it's either Mr. Sanders or Sanders. I'm fine with either or. I said, now the kids, I let them do that, but the adults, I said because here's the thing. And like, why you don't like that? I said, let me tell you something. If I am the principal, I don't need to tell him that because guess what? You can be the principal without having that behind you. See, if you don't know who the principal is in that building, that means that person probably not leading that building the right way. And so that's the thing because it's not about the clothes, it's not about the walk, but it's about how you talk. And when I say that, you have to be able to talk and say what you mean and mean what you say. Like I tell people all the time, that's one thing about me. I got on this podcast late because I was helping set up for 8th grade prom. Now, remind you, I had a whole meeting on the other side of town. I came back and did that because, and come to find out, the lady that was helping, everybody left her hanging. And she was like, we had a meeting, everybody just gone. So I'm glad you came back, Sanders. I said, hey, my daddy, if he didn't leave me with nothing else, he told me, always live and die by your word. He said, if I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's like, we talked about a scenario one time I had in a interview about how I had to get a kid needed another ID. We took his picture and everything. Well, the day got crazy and it just boom, 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 boom. I saw that ID on my desk and we got out at 2:45. It was 2:40. I sprinted to that bus ramp. Hey, boy, hey, come here. Hey, your ID. They're like, this is how you could have gave it to tomorrow. I said, I told you I was gonna get it for you today. It's done. Miss Sanders, you G with it. I said, hey man, I appreciate it, but nah, it's called implement what my father taught me. If I tell you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it.
Just one of those 5 agreements. Be impeccable with your word. If you say you're going to do it,
Yeah.
do it. Yeah. And I always say that, my name and my reputation, that's all I have. So I have to be sure to, if I say I'm going to do it, do it. If my name is on it, just try to represent it to the best of my ability. So I do understand what you're saying about that. But I'm going to segue. You made me think about something when you talked about just when they're calling you Principal Sanders and all of that. And so I used to be, as the administrator in my district, teachers would have to come to the office to sign out, to go out of the building on their planning period. And we all know that. We know why you have to do it, But my thing in education is I always told teachers, we are professionals. You know, you are a professional. I'm a professional. You went to school for 4 years, some of you 8 years. You have multiple degrees. We're professionals. Just because we work in a school does not mean you have to be treated like a child.
Yes.
I mean, like you're professional. So, teachers would come to me and say, hey, Miss Ward, can I go to Walmart? And I would say, get up, go, come back, and let's rephrase that. And she, what? And I was like, you're an adult. I would like for you to come to me and say, hey, it's my planning period. I'm going to run out to Walmart. I'm signing out. We're all good. As an adult, I don't want to have to ask anybody, can I run to CVS on my planning period?
Yes. And Don, you know what? We talked about this years ago when we were both in our schools. because it's that professionalism and giving teachers the freedom to know as a leader, I will treat you as a professional. And let me explain what I mean. When I first got into leadership, teachers were calling me and they wanted to take off, right? And so, it was part of our structure that you notify and let someone know. And so they were calling me in the morning or that night, giving me this long story. So I would cut them off and say, okay, as long as you told me you're not going to be there, you put in for a sub, right? And you have plans, right? And they were like, yes, ma'am. And I said, that's all you need to tell me. See, the state gave you those days to use at your discretion. And if it's not, within the parameters where you can't take off, that's fine with me. You don't have to tell me your personal business. I'm your leader, but that's something that a boss would do. A boss wants to micromanage it. I'm your leader. So I trust you as a professional just to say, I will be out and I have everything ready and prepared for my absence.
And then, but we have to say, Sonia, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but we have to say, and just as I used to do with that, may I go? We have to say, but as long as you do what you're supposed to do, we're going to have this relationship. But at the point in time when you're leaving every single day and you're coming back late and I'm having to find somebody to cover your class, or you're out without a sub and da-da-da, then we have an issue. So as long as we're all professional and we stay professional in that realm, then I don't think that it should be an issue.
It shouldn't. I mean, because that's the thing. I used to tell people that it's funny because that's where I got it from you, doctor. I had a teacher come in, like, my first year of my principalship, they shut the door. I'm like, hey, you okay? Well, I wanted to tell you I was going to be out. I'm like, yeah, I saw it. I approved it. What? You all right? Well, I felt like you needed to know why. I said, you got the time, right? Well, yes. I said, hold on. I said, you've been in this game longer than me. I said, you got what, 5 years on me, right? Well, yes. I said, you done accumulated a lot of time then, huh? Well, yes, sir. I said, okay. Now, if you want me to listen, I'll listen. And it was like, well, I would feel better if I could tell you. Ma'am, you shut the door. Hey, it's after school. I told you I have an open door policy. Let's talk. And, she told me, I said, do you feel better? She was like, yes. I said, I still was going to say it was okay even if you didn't know. Well, Mr. Sanders, thank you. And I said,
Isn't crazy?
yeah, but she asked me though. She said, "Why did you want to?" I said, "Because I got this from good leader from back in the gap. Told me you don't have to give me a life story while you taking off. You got the time. You got abused. You don't come in here every day. Now you come shutting my door every week. Yeah, I said it's gonna be like my favorite movie was Players Club. I said, yeah, I'll be like Bo Burnett. It's gonna be trouble, trouble,
Gonna be
trouble.
trouble.
But I said, you don't do that though. So I said, you don't have to give me a life story. Look, y'all about to have a child in the next few months. If you come here to shut that door telling me she in labor, I'm gonna push you out of here myself. So I said, no, I said, let's, and she was like, you know what, Miss Sanders, you pretty much seem like a compassionate person. Thank you. I said, you're welcome. But that's their time. And so, you're not abusing, you gotta respect it.
What you did is you strengthened that relationship. So now when you need something from that teacher, they're going to bend over backwards to make sure that they show up for you because you showed up and gave them that professionalism or that professional autonomy when it mattered. And like I will tell you a secret though. I guess it won't be secret when we put it out to the social media world, right?
Right.
Everybody knows I'm not a morning person. If you know me in real life, you know I'm not a morning person. So the reason I really set the standard, yes, I do believe wholeheartedly your business is your business. I don't need to know that. But it was also because people were calling me when I'm trying to get dressed, get my kids together, get out the door, drive across town. And it was slowing up my routine because I have a time to a science my routine in the morning. Now, if you call me and tell me a 10-minute story about why you can't show up today, you just pushed me 10 minutes back. So I actually started telling people, you don't need to call me. You can text me. I don't need that much control over your life as your leader that I gotta now make you wake up and with your morning throat and your sick, sick body to give me a long story. I'm not that ostentatious. I just need to know, hey, text me. Hey, I won't be in. I put in for a stuff. Here's the number. And we can keep it moving.
Yeah. And remember, you said something earlier about the difference between a boss and a leader. I used to always say, my boss is in heaven. Like I have a supervisor, but a boss is just, to me, when people want to be a boss, that means that they don't have that shared leadership. That means that they don't know how to work with others, in my mind. That means that they don't even know how to delegate appropriately. When you want to be a boss, that means you want to be in control. And I had a toxic leader one time, and I said, you say no to everything. You know, say yes to the easy stuff. Say yes to the stuff that doesn't matter, so that when you have to say no, they're okay with it, because they're going to say, you know what? This person has said yes to me 35,000 times, and now I got to know. But why say no to, can I, use red paper instead of blue paper? Because, why? It doesn't matter. So always, as a good leader, always as a good leader, just try to say yes when you can, so the no's won't hurt.
Because my thing is this: there should never be an adult, I don't care what organization you work in, that has to ask me, can they go heal themselves? Like, can they take off and go to the doctor? I think that is so absurd for someone to want to manage people that badly, where that you make them first tell you their most intimate thing about them that they may not be ready to share. They may still be processing that.
Y'all know it's a district like that though. I'm gonna leave it at that. That's a mic drop. But it's a district like that.
Now I can see if you're creating a habit and a pattern that I need to investigate. But I mean, if it's very sporadic and typically you are a person who handles your business, I've never had a problem out of you, but you need to go check on yourself. Who am I to say you don't have permission this day to go heal yourself or to check on your children?
Say that even I had a teacher, she took off. We got 1 day per month, and she took off 1 day per month. And it would drove me crazy. But I was like, ma'am, now you're off. You get sick, you're off without pay because you have no leave. But, it's our job to try to direct them and being responsible with their leave, because the kids ultimately are the ones who are going to suffer when you're out that much. But when it's professional and it's for a reason, like you said, to heal yourself or you're sick or whatever, I don't think that a real leader should feel like it's their authority to make that decision.
And Don, I would have driven you crazy.
But because I'm saying though,
every year for 30 years, I took off. If it wasn't a holiday in that month, I was taking off 1 day, because that kept me from losing my mind.
But I'm telling you though, it's certain districts they ain't tolerating it. Now I tell people like some districts, they, if you want to compare them, I'm talking about I'm like, well, have you ever seen the Death Row documentary? They're like, yeah. I said, it's some districts like that. You can't.
Not Death Row.
If you do, you about to lose your job. So I mean, but it's kind of keeping both eyes open. But that's where you have to be a little bit more selective. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm not gonna knock an administrator in a situation like that, because if my director coming down and telling me, hey, look, you got this many amount of attendance issues. This person has surgery still while they out. You're like, but they got to do their job. I'm gonna tell you, being around, I never understood the difference where you had to, because as an AP, I was like, man, hey, that boss, like, y'all had it. I'm gonna leave. But when I got in that seat, I never forget. Dr. Joe Coleman, he executive director, over there at the Gillette Point, he told me, he said, Sounders, new levels, new devils. I said, what you tell me? He said, remember, you talk all that noise, because he gets some glass down. Talked all that noise about you having to do these boss decisions. Well, guess what? You finna get ready to do that boss decision. I called that man as soon as I had to make an executive decision. He said, what's up, boss? I said, I get it now. And
you should have called me too, because he used to tell me the same thing. He didn't understand sometimes why I had to make certain
You bring that up.
decisions.
This is about a decade now. Now you want to chastise me?
I'm just saying, brother, you should have called me too, because I started when he first, became an AP. He called me asking me questions. I'm thinking to myself, yeah. So when we had that conversation when you were on the leadership team, you didn't get it. But I'm gonna help you through it, brother. I'm gonna tell you, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because what I laughed internally about is he was making decisions that were critical, that I had to ponder through and make over a decade ago. But see, when you walk in that capacity now, you get why you have to make certain decisions that may not be appealing to everyone, but it's necessary for growth in your campus. Yeah. But I'm proud of you, because you are one of the most courageous leaders I know. But I know that you have to get in that, you have to be in that role to fully understand why certain things happen.
Absolutely.
And as a leader, you don't even have the time to explain it to everyone sometimes. But as a leader, you do have to be transparent enough to keep tying the decisions back to the vision and the goals and the mission of the school. And I absolutely think leaders need to be very transparent in that. And then sometimes as the leader, it is, I don't know why this is, you guys, but sometimes you just become the common enemy. The higher you go, there's just someone down there that is just mad at your elevation. And I don't know I don't know if you've experienced that, but it seems like when you start with people and then they choose not to want to grow. It's a choice. Like, they have the same, they can go to school, they can apply for other positions, but they choose not to. They get mad when you choose to start to elevate in your journey, and then you become the person who's changed. Now you think no, I don't feel that. You feel that way because you didn't make a choice that I made, and I think that's so unfair to leaders.
Absolutely.
It is, but however, it's just some people, as far as elevation, everybody not gonna be able to join your journey, and that's just being real about it. You sometimes, because I tell people all the time, if you'd have told me this, what, 15, 20 years ago, I'd have been like, get out of here. I'm not finna do that. I'll never forget, and I was at a conference. My old football coach is the superintendent up near Dallas. But the coach was like, man, what you doing now? You said a leadership. I said, I'm principal now. He said, He said, now I'm gonna give you some games, son. He said, stop saying what you don't want to do and just do what God tells you to do.
Amen.
He said, and because I was like, now I'm not gonna become an AP. I'm not gonna become, I told him, I said, I'm not gonna say anything. He said, let me guess, you're not gonna become superintendent? I said, I'm not saying anything of that. I'm gonna do whatever God want me to do. I said, I wasn't listening to understanding, but I was also young. So now it's kind of a thing where you have to get guidance in it through this journey. So to me, I think making those critical decisions, you have to make boss decisions at times. But as a leader, you try to make sure you lead with compassion and have an understanding, because I will say this, in leadership, there is a lack of empathy. And you have some people that they are oblivious to some things. And if that teacher, I'm finna write her up. She just not doing what she's supposed to do. She's off her game. She's horrible. She's this, she that. But did you find out that
Conversation.
did you have a conversation? Did you know her husband just left her with 2 children? And she up here coming to work after dropping her kids off. And the kids are saying, why daddy not coming back? You ain't asked that though. And so that's where we gotta understand the things. Because I talk to teachers all the time. Got a kid, hey, he always late. He always want to stop by your office. Why is he always stop by there? I said, because he getting a granola bar because he ain't ate nothing. And he missed breakfast because the bus was late. Because he last meal he had was at school yesterday. And the cheeses that I gave him that he had to share with his little brother.
Yes. That reminds me
Then you have that.
That reminds me of a time when I did a field trip with my teachers. I was at a middle school AP, and I've been an AP my entire time. This particular school, I talked about it the last time. This school was changing. We had kids. One time, our district had a rule that if you lived within 2 miles of the school, you had to walk, so the bus wouldn't come get you.
We have that too.
Girl. And so we had this little boy, and he would come to school, and he would smell like Pepe Le Pew every single day. His mom went to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. He had to get himself up, and he came to school every single day. And, we would have to give him change of clothes, food, blah, blah, blah. So I did a field trip at the beginning of the year, and I got the bus, and I put all the teachers on the bus, and we rode. And we rode the neighborhood, and I said, because I knew the addresses by heart, because I was writing disciplinary referrals and I was writing addresses. I was like, okay, this street, this is where blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah lives. This street, this is where blah, blah, blah walks from every single day. And you all cannot be compassionate because he's 10 minutes tardy for school. He got up, and mama went to work at 6 a.m., but he still came to school, mainly because he wanted that breakfast. And I told the cafeteria workers, whenever he walks in, please give him a cheese toast. Please give him a granola bar. Because sometimes teachers don't understand. And I would always say, we can't let our middle class mindset cloud what we're dealing with. Because $10 to me means that I'm going to go to Chick-fil-A today and get me a combo. But $10 to his mama meant I got to put gas in my car and I have to buy food, some ramen noodles for my children. I think they really got it, because most of them didn't understand that kid was walking that distance to school.
Yeah.
And a lot of other ones. So it's important.
Sometimes you got to seek clarity, in your decision making. And I want to go back before we move to our next segment to what Jay said, because I think that is important for us to recap this. You do sometimes or often have to make boss decisions, but it is important to know you can make boss decisions, but your delivery is still under the scope of leadership.
Yes.
Because leadership, remember, is the art of influencing others to follow your decisions. And so I think that is sometimes overlooked in our delivery. I deliver it to you in my leadership mannerism, but I'm making a very critical and courageous decision that's necessary. And it is my job as the boss, because remember, boss is about management. And so that decision is tied to what I have to manage. And I manage programs, structures, and systems, but I don't manage people. I influence and lead people. And there is a very distinctive difference that leaders need to know. Yes, you have a title and you get paid to make boss-like decisions, but your job is an act of service of leading people to follow the decisions that you make. So, but anything else on that? And don't be afraid to be transparent as leaders, to the world watching out there. It's okay to be vulnerable as a leader, to say, look, I messed that up. What do you all think as a staff that we need to do, or an organization that we need to do to make this better? Or stop trying to think it's your job to do everything. Find your top talent. A good leader sifts the top talent to find who can do it. One thing that Dawn actually taught me is when we were reading like all these leadership books, right? And she introduced me to this book, and top 10 distinctions between the middle class and millionaires. So it's just, another book. But she told me, hey, she used to say, Steve Jobs said that he was successful because he hired everybody who was smarter than him. Well, when I went into leadership, I adopted that mindset. Yeah, I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I need to find the top talent that actually can do the job, and they need to know more than me. They don't always have to know more than me, but I need to hire the smartest person for that scope of work that I need done. It doesn't have to come from me. I just need to know how to be an expert at recruiting top talent as a leader. And some leaders don't get that either, and that adds to the toxic leadership because they want to shine all of the time. It's okay to let someone else shine and get credit.
That is so funny, because I literally wrote a few minutes ago that you have to know your strengths and your weaknesses and surround yourself with people who can help you. Surround yourself with people. If you know that your weakness is XYZ, surround somebody who's strong in that area and be okay with allowing them to shine. I just wrote it. So we're like in tandem here because I absolutely just was on that kind of same thought pattern. Delegate, surround yourself with good people.
That's the smart thing to do.
Absolutely.
I tell people that one of the first things I did, like when I went to a school and I knew we had a big issue with math. You know what I went and found? A person that I knew that was smart and could teach algebra one and knew algebra one inside and out and could teach it with his eyes closed. He was my AP. And I hired him, and I said, you over the math department. I said, because after algebra one, I said, I'm good, but you know tree, you know geometry. I said, you got, he was like, oh, I got you. And even was in the room, like, pulling kids, like, oh, let me help y'all. Because the only reason why he cutting up, because he don't know how to do this. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. They call him Miss G. All right, Miss G, appreciate it. I got it. Yeah, but you still gonna do that detention. Yeah, I know, I messed up, but you know what? Hey, but the kids, and I started seeing in the math class, behavior rates were going down. It was
Absolutely.
because he was going in there working with them, pulling them. Because that was the thing. I had a teacher tell me one time, I never seen a principal work with kids in their office. I said, but I said, now he's still going home. But I said, why before he go home though, we finna get this poem right, and we finna be
Yeah,
able to get this dialogue together. And mom was like, what took him so long to come to front? He got this poem when he come back for these next 3 days, and
that's right.
I was working with him on it. Really? I like, yeah.
The first moment I met Jay, I knew he was destined to be a principal and a leader. He was leading the school, a lot of areas in the school, whether it was morale or how to overcome challenges, before he was even headed that way in the principalship. And I would always tell him, you make a great principal. And he's like, I'm good right here. And I'm like, no, because people actually trust him and they trust that he's a person of his word, like he said, but it is the way he influences people to follow him because of how he is able to meet you where you are. And some people can't meet you where you are. I had to adopt that from him, because I'm thinking, I don't know, understand it. Like, how did you get this job? And he had to soften me because I had to learn, and this is a vulnerable moment for me as a leader, not to be so judgmental when they couldn't get it. I had to realize that as a leader, it was something that I was doing that wasn't transferring over in a manner where they could follow my expectation. And I will say, like, I've learned a lot from you all, obviously, and many other leaders along the way, but I had to rethink how I led people because I used to not. I came from a district where it was a sense of urgency all of the time. And you didn't have time to coddle people, babysit, handhold. And I had to learn how to do that when it was necessary and soften in places where people were stuck because of past bad leadership or systems or things that were happening. And I was like, wait a minute, you should already know how. Why am I having to? You've been here, and it wasn't novice teachers. These are teachers. Some teachers have been there, been around like 10 years. And I'm like, you don't know how to. You don't know that you don't put incorrect student work out in the hallway for everybody to walk by and then ask you why it's not right. Like, but those were commonsensical things that no one had ever told him. So then I was holding them to an expectation where no one had ever really mentioned it. And he had to really teach me that. And then I was like, okay, I got to go back then and act like they've never been led. They've been managed,
but not
they've
led.
never been led.
Yeah. I think that, when you talk about that, it just reminds me of that one thing that I struggled with when I went from the classroom to administration, and that was modeling or having compassion with teachers who didn't have classroom management. I struggled with that because I never had a classroom management issue. So for you to be crying because of the 12-year-olds, I just could not understand it. And I literally had to teach myself to be able to model, to be able to coach, to be able to really work with people who didn't have that skill innately, because it was natural for me. And I was like, man, how you gonna let these kids come in here and make you cry? You gonna let somebody come to your house and disrespect you? You ain't coming up in my classroom. Like I struggled with that, but I did learn to eventually model and teach it and coach it. But it was I mean, I'll be mad. I'm like, girl, you can't be mad at these people. You gotta help them. So it was hard. That was a hard thing for me.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna move to the next segue. And what is that, Jay?
Well, we finna go through a little bit of story time.
We
Everybody
love
got
story
these
time.
stories. Of toxic leadership. I can give you an example of toxic leadership. I'll start this off. Some people might be like, "Well, I already know," but I'll never forget. I was in a situation where I was coming across some stuff, and a coworker made a decision to you wanted to use school funds to take care of something that was not correct. So, hey, trill as they can be. So, sometimes you it's late, but this is another thing, leadership. I tell people when you approving stuff, you better make sure you look at it verbatim. So, I'm going through, the click and stop. So hold on, maybe I'm not reading this right. So I get on the horn and start calling everybody. Said, now I know I'm not, I might not be the brightest apple in the bunch, but you can't use school funds to do anything, not on point. Yeah, that's true, Sanders. So make sure I'm not crazy. I'm at the legal conference, y'all. I'm at the law conference. Hey, I got this question. They looking at me like, did he ask that? My buddy, one of my buddies from my former school, just said, "Sam, you all right?" I said, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Man," I said, "Okay." People think I'm crazy. I want you to read because I'm a Sanders for a reason. I keep receipts. So I had to read it. And I can't even put on here what he said. He said, "I just know you lying." I said, "Okay." So he said, "No, it's not you." I get called in, talk about this, like why am I not approving it? And I said, well, for one, under this documentation right here in Texas Education Code, I can't, you know. I'd have started a war.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'd have started a war.
Okay, we're talking about some. Come on now.
Well, here's the thing. You get caught up in a school vehicle and you get a ticket. That's your ticket.
Yes.
You don't put no requisition in. Yeah, see, I know that's what I'm saying. You get what I'm saying. You don't put nothing in for nobody to approve that you done messed up. So, I call the person in like, hey, look here, man. I mean, I ain't trying to be funny, but did you do that on accident? This the kicker. Oh, now, I was in the school vehicle, so I feel like so, by now, so I'm like, my mouth was dry.
So was it speeding or was it an expired tag?
No, it was a park ticket.
Parking ticket.
Yeah,
Okay.
so you gonna park you gonna make yourself a park spot. You know how we
Yeah,
do.
he wanted to know who's reimbursing me for the
Me.
popo.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
Okay.
That's how that work.
I can see if the district didn't have tags that were,
Yeah,
you
if they
know,
expired.
He chose to park in the wrong spot, but he wanted you to pay for it
Yeah,
out of school funds.
school funds.
He's crazy.
So I'm like, so I said, you really want, I said, so basically you want me to go to jail. How you going to jail? I said, sir, I could lose my certificate. I said, you do not use that for school funds. So now I get told, hey, I don't know how to look out for people, So I'm getting, I said, oh, so I'm the bad guy. Yeah, I'm the bad guy because I ain't approved no thing. I said, well, guess what, man? I said, it's heroes and villains in this world. I guess I'm on the side of a villain. So,
exactly.
I said I need to play that theme music. My son be playing by Future, what's called Heroes and Villains in Metro Bowman. So I said I need to get out the car. Hey, and I did. I started getting out the car every day. I played it every day because I'm like, I'm the villain. And everybody I talk to in this realm told me, Sanders, you're not crazy. If anything, you need to get your shirt called standing on business. I said,
That's right.
I said because that, but the thing that got me, let me tell you, the thing that got me about it being toxic, I wouldn't support it. And that's what killed me because I'm like, are y'all serious? You're telling me that I should hit approve, and so when TEA come ready to do that audit, and I done defended my dissertation 3 years later, and I'm up here shaking hands, and I done became the assistant director of HR, and all for them to come in and have that superintendent come tell me, hey Sanders, your certificate been flagged. What? Because what happened, man? They TA said they reviewing your certificate. And it would be because I turned the other cheek. So no, I'm not sorry. I'm not finna do that. So I can be the villain, I can
That's
be
right.
whatever. And so now you start looking at a level of it was stated to me that I won't
Integrity.
yeah, it was stated to me that I won't let it go. And I said, this was my exact words to that person. I said, you damn right I won't let it go because you not finna sit up here and take food out my kid's mouth. I said, that's taking food out my kid's mouth. How is that taking food out your kid's mouth? Because I said, if my certificate ever gets under review because you want me to look the other way, now I can't get a job nowhere. And I've seen it because I had that happen to a friend and they only did it by mistake. And
Mm-hmm.
because they did it by mistake, they paying for it. And they told me, they said, Silas, I'm an education consultant because I have to be now. Because I made a mistake. He said, I'm thankful you read everything you ever approved. I said, I had two people teach me that. But I said, thing about it, now now everything's toxic. Now there's an issue. Man, well, we got a problem. You going to go check on your father and stuff. My father's got dementia, he's dying. But now there's an issue. And so I said, oh, okay, that's fine. We can go ahead and do what we gotta do. But everything started just declining because I can't sit up here and approve something of wrong. But what we call karma though, because I hate to say that, because when you got favor, things line up. And so therefore that place off the chain right now. And it's
But
not
you
because
know
I ain't
what?
there,
It's
but
never, you always have to do the right thing and it will always work out for you. I'm very proud that you did not let someone strong arm you into doing the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
And it had, so you did the right thing. It'll work out. And sometimes God has a way of moving you in a direction when it's not your choice, but it's the direction for your good in the long term. So that is good. But that was, yeah, that's
and I
crazy.
was proud of me because y'all know I'm from Oak Cliff now. That's not so much of the greatest place to be in.
Yeah.
That y'all saw Power. Ghost had a different side of him.
Girl, he
But
has a song and a movie for every scenario.
but no, I'm saying because they almost brought that side out of me. They almost brought that Jay Sanders out from the cliff. But God has really worked with me, and I have my freedom. And I'm talking about because I ain't hurt nobody. I have my
Yeah.
freedom, and I'm blessed, and I get to go see my kids, watch them play football, and all that good stuff. So I said, yeah, he's really
Yeah.
worked me because you
Yeah.
start messing with my family and my money, we got a problem.
No problem.
Well, I tell you what, that's another podcast for another time. Retaliation in the workplace. And like seriously, because I've seen leaders actually do that when you won't follow their guidance and it's unlawful or immoral or just wrong, not a best practice. I've seen them retaliate. So we need to talk about that in another podcast because that would be a good conversation to have. Also, Don, okay, what about you? Story time.
Story time, story time. So y'all not gonna believe this. Not gonna believe this. So Jay, I'm gonna just pull at your heartstrings. You tell me that your dad was ill and you were trying to take care of him. I had a toxic leader, had a teacher. She was an only child, and we knew she was the only child because she let everybody know, honey, she loved her mama and she loved her daddy. Honey, that was the spoiled 40-some year old person I ever seen in my life. Well, her mom passed. Her mom was sick, had cancer. Mom passed. Went out of town. Wasn't from this area. Went out of town to take care of her mom. Well, we worked for a toxic leader who had favorites in the building and had not so favorites in the building. There was only a pocket of favorites and everybody else was in that other pocket. Well, the lady had been gone from work for about 10 days straight. We were having subs, we had people covering her class, we were doing lesson plans for her. We had taken up money to send her flowers. There were some people going down to the funeral about 4 or 5 hours from here. Well, HR called and said, hey, Miss So and so hadn't clocked in 10 days, and we're going to send her a letter for abandoning her job. Do you know where she is? The toxic principal said, no. We don't know where she is. The woman got a letter in the mail.
What?
Woman got a letter.
Everything you say gonna come back on you
Yeah.
10 times more. You know that
What
just
till you do right by me?
yeah, until you do right by
The
me.
woman got a
That
letter in
wrong.
the mail, y'all, saying that if she did not return to school to work within blah blah by this date, she would be terminated. So we had, she went to the union and they had to fight for her, and we had an interim superintendent who literally called her from his cell phone and said, look, we understand that your mom passed, and we understand that you have been with your dad trying to make sure everything's okay. And when you decide that you're ready to come back to work, you will have a job.
Been almost happened to me when I was an assistant principal at this one school that where actually I'm going to do my story about. I had surgery. Everybody knew that I was having surgery. Had filled out FMLA papers and everything. Do you know this person did not send in my FMLA papers? So I was about to now, God has just designed me to always be 2 steps ahead and to think. I just called in to say, hey, let me give you all an update. And they said, okay. Well, we knew you told us you would have surgery at this time, but we've never received any paperwork. And I said, well, what do you mean? I have my copy, and I always keep receipts. I always tell everybody, my saying, I get it from my old AP. If it's not on paper, it's vapor. So I sent everything in. They had spoken to her, and she had told them that I just was so overwhelmed. She's so overwhelmed with the climate that she just took off. I don't know. She never said when she was coming back. That's how she used to talk.
Boy,
She
that's called
never said. And oh my God. And so the HR person, I sent it to her. And of course, they reprimanded her because now you have intentionally almost caused me to get an abandonment letter when you absolutely knew that I had surgery. But she was upset because while I was out, they had to handle all of the discipline. And literally, they sent 3 people to that campus to do the job that I was doing by myself. It was so crazy. But that wasn't even my story time. But I guess I'll tell my other story at another time. But I can relate. And I felt like, probably like your teacher, Don, it's made me so sad because I'm a person that everybody knows I'll do anything for anybody. And I was going above and beyond to try to help her with her job. And even knowing that she was this toxic leader, but I was just determined to help her succeed. And all the while, she was trying to tear me down. And one of the reasons that I ended up getting a promotion, because you see, God doesn't like when people bother his divine. I ended up getting a promotion because the thing her boss said is, you never complained. You never said anything negative about her. And when we would ask you, you would never even tell us these things that were going on. And so for that, we knew that you were a person of integrity. And that really made me feel good because Lord knows I was calling Jay like this where they do this? Like, what is this? But I literally learned that integrity matters, and integrity will always outfavor deception.
Yes.
And do right. And Jay, you're like crooked, like a
Yes.
pencil.
oh, I'm sorry. I was
He,
letting it check.
we gave him the whole gangster lean from those stories. He was like,
Well, no, that story, I know that very well. That's why I was kind of like, man, how savage can you be?
So she
Like,
was trying to
seriously.
just get me fired, and literally I was doing everything to
I don't
save
know.
her. Do you know, I literally, well, I don't want to put that on here, but we'll talk about that another time. But literally, she just said she didn't know where I was.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's like, to me, like, how do you say, we're taking up money to send down for the funeral for flowers. Every day there's a sub for a couple of days, or covering and splitting classes, but first of all, you don't know where she is, and you
But
don't know
say,
when she's
boy,
coming back.
I don't know if some of you remember this, but when you there, when I told her, I said, "Hey, man, you need to stop all that lying." I did. I told her to say, "Man, look, you need to stop all that lying. Now you know you lying."
We don't want to tell everybody. We want to protect the names
Yes, please.
of the innocent. But
I just
yes,
didn't know
I
if you
do remember
remember
that.
this.
You know what? That segues right into what I want to ask when you get untickled.
Yes, I'm ready. Yes.
So I want to say, so what are the do's and don'ts for leaders? Like, what would you do, should you absolutely not do to avoid being a toxic leader? And what are some of the things that you absolutely should do in order to be an effective leader? What do you
Great
think?
question. Go ahead, Jay. You go first.
For me, begin with the end in mind.
Okay.
You gotta know where you're going, in order to get there. Like if I tell people, I hate that phrase where they say we are building the plane as we go. You're gonna crash. You're
Yes.
gonna crash. So do that. Have that, if it's with the mission and vision, make sure you have the end game for that. Also, be fair. Don't sit up here, just because you like this person, I'm gonna take care of them and look out for them. But I don't like you, so I'm gonna treat you any kind of way. Be fair, be truthful, be out there. Hey, you don't be in there doing all that lying. If you be in there lying, tell the truth.
Manipulating the situation.
Oh yeah, I'll be professional with you guys. Yes, don't be manipulative. Always be honest.
Yeah, don't come in there lying, people. Just be truthful. I would say my absolute do to for people to become a very resilient but yet effective leader is to find a way to show kindness and compassion amidst the challenges that you are going to naturally have, but also don't appear to be passive aggressive or just passive and indecisive. You need to be able to make a decision, but also keeping the people and the students and the organization, because we always say this is not just about education. These are real practical things that can be applied in any organization. So make sure that you are decisive and not being passive, and welcome people. And one of the things that I think is an absolute don't, please don't do this ever, leaders, is don't be afraid to show your vulnerability to people and admit your mistakes. If you make a mistake, it's okay. Don't make it a habit. But if you made a decision and it adversely affected people, then own up to that and then allow your key stakeholders to help you make it better. It doesn't mean you have to change your plans or your vision or where you're trying to get to, but you do need to make sure that you include the stakeholders that it affects when you make decisions, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable enough to allow them to give you that critical feedback that you need to grow. One thing that I learned, they say pressure builds diamonds and it does bust pipes, but also so you got to decide what kind of diamond you're trying to be.
Right.
You don't want to be you want to be a shining diamond, or do you want to be a busted diamond?
I agree. I agree. So let me see my absolute do, and I think I said it earlier, and you just covered it. Recognize your strengths and your weaknesses, and surround yourself with people who are strong in the areas where you're weak, and that way you guys can work together. And always be willing to. We said it earlier. Have a focus. Like, know where you're trying to go, and that therefore everything that you do, you're working towards that goal. So I believe in culture and climate. I believe that if you go into a workplace, a school, anywhere that you go, if you don't, as the leader, make a conscientious effort to have a climate to have a culture of leadership, to have a culture of kindness, to have a culture of excellence, then you won't be successful. So I think that building that culture and that climate, letting everybody know what your goals are so that we can help you work towards those goals is absolutely, for me, I think is necessary in order to be a great leader. Don't. I'll go to high school. Don't make teachers change grades. Don't do that. Do not do that. In elementary school, don't bring the kids to your office and give them candy and then send them back to the office and do no discipline. In middle school, now seriously, the don't is what you said, Sonia. Always be sure that you're doing everything in integrity. Even if you make the wrong decision, you need to know that that wrong decision was made with integrity, in good decision. And I just believe that having integrity, you should always have integrity. Don't do things with malice in mind, because if you do it, then you're going to create an environment that is absolutely toxic.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Good nuggets and valuable lessons that we have shared now with those leaders out there. And we thank you so much. Please don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and share. Share with everyone. It's not just an educational podcast. This leadership practices for any entity. So make sure that you share. And before we close tonight, let the good people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and what you have going on. We have some good, not only good educational leaders on here, we have some business moguls in the house. They're powerhouse. We're multifaceted on this podcast. So what do you have going on, DJW?
So I am in my retirement. I am a real estate agent here in the Huntsville, Alabama area. I'm also licensed in Georgia, but guess what? I can help you in any state. Do not buy or sell anywhere without calling me, because I can definitely help you. So I'm also a property manager. I'm an associate broker at my real estate office, and I teach real estate courses. So just kind of do a lot of things in the real estate realm, but also, in the education realm, I work part-time for the association, the Alabama Education Association, as a building rep for our local coordinator here. So that's me. You can find me on Instagram at DJ Ward 19. You can find me on Facebook at Dawn J Ward. You can also find me on Twitter and all of those other places at DJ Ward 1908.
Awesome. What about you, Jay Sanders?
Hey, well, I'm gonna have a local RV coming to a homecoming near you. So
Okay.
you need that plug on that. You want to get a good price on RVs coming around that time for game day, and then also with your homecoming. Hey, HBCU, you gotta have that RV. So if you need that, you can DM me for SNS services. But you want to just find me, want to talk education, you can go to Jay Sanders Lead. That's my Twitter. Jay Sanders Leads. I'm at Jay Sanders Leads Twitter. And then, if you want to talk about trying to push something for homecoming, we can go ahead and you can hit me up on IG. Certified in Texas. Just the
So you
end.
don't send RVs to Alabama, is what you're saying?
You know what? I got to give a weight up for that one. You got to let me sew up Texas first. I would like to sew up the South, though. That, because hey, I've been up there to Alabama A&M. My son played the game up there. And so, yeah, we going to get that because just for that game, I saw a nice sized crowd. So I can imagine what homecoming like. So, yeah, I need to talk to y'all about that. I was still a little salty about y'all using the hill, but we good with that now.
We are the college that sits on the hill. We've argued about this, Don, many times,
Okay.
because Prairie View sits on the hill also.
But it's
So
not as beautiful as our hill.
it is
I
beautiful.
can guarantee you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I would have been to y'all campus, okay? I ain't moved, okay? I'm not moved now. Let's not do that.
Let's wrap up this podcast.
Yeah,
okay, and so good people, I thank you for joining us again. And I want to say you can find me on TikTok at leadership_dynasty. Also on Instagram at leadership_dynasty. And you can find me on my educational consultancy site at leadershipdynasty.com. and all things educational leadership, but also leadership development, strategic planning, and coaching, and all things leadership. We thank you for tonight. Thank you to my wonderful, impeccable co-host, DJ Ward, Jay Sanders. We missed Big Lou tonight, but he will be joining us next week. And we hope you enjoyed the episode. Make sure you connect with us on YouTube. Hit that like, subscribe, and share. Good night, good people.
Good night.
See you next time.